welcome back to my channel. This vlog specifically is going to be about a temporary resident permit and the process. I recently did a like a poll on our Instagram just to see kind of what content I guess that you want to see on the channel, because believe it or not, I do find this whole thing really awkward. Like I find it awkward. I feel like I'm just really awkward in general, but I'm trying my best. And I'll be honest, a lot of the my new little friends, and like I said the last time, my new little friends on Instagram, and obviously my subscribers on the channel, kind of are keeping me going at the minute, because I'll be honest, the whole thing just gives me anxiety. I'm a real big overthinker, so I'm gonna try to continue to bring like the I guess like the paperwork side to our journey. Obviously I want to try and remember, and if you've seen my other videos, I do tend to veer off sometimes. I don't mean to, it's just I don't know what to say. So I did a vlog, I did a poll anyway. I did a couple of polls on the Instagram basically saying, would you like to see more about the process of the temporary resident permit and the criminal inadmissibility that we experienced? And I hope that it will help others in their journey. I do speak to quite a lot of other people now that are kind of going through a similar, or maybe a few steps behind us, so I hope that it can help. If you can hear Jax, he's in the background, he's on his iPad. Just give me a minute while I do this vlog. I don't know if that's not bad parenting. I was going to say, is it? It's not. Everyone, either way, he's on his iPad, he's watching monster trucks. He likes to do it. I'm going to let him do it. So this vlog in particular is going to be specifically about the temporary resident permit and the process, how we took it. Obviously, I do have to say, like, we are in no way kind of consultants, and this is all our personal journey on what we are currently going through as I speak. We are literally, this is our situation right now, and yeah, so this is where we're at. So I hope that this can help others essentially. So to begin with, so criminal inadmissibility is where you are technically classed as inadmissible to enter Canada, which means you can't enter Canada for whatever reason, whether it be medical or due to a conviction in your past perhaps. Obviously, a lot of countries do have a similar thing, like Canada have like the ETA. I think the US has like the, I think it's called an ESTA, ESTA, that you have to fill out before you fly. This is to help you, like you have to have this to gain access to get onto the flight essentially. This is kind of what stopped us from boarding our flights basically. So if you've not seen our previous videos and you're new here, I will just, in a nutshell, we're moving to Canada. We are currently in the process. We were getting our work permits at point of entry. We had everything ready. My husband's got an LMIA sponsorship to sponsor us to move over. And we had everything sorted, sold everything. Day before, it actually tells you to apply for your ETA within 72 hours of flying. I didn't. I did it before. I did it about 2 weeks before. Mine and the children's all came back approved. Jordan's didn't come back at all. Still waiting to this day for it to arrive. So we weren't able to board the flight and left us in a real sticky situation essentially. So yeah, but either way, you can look at the other videos if you want to go into that. But so that prevented us from boarding our flight that we had booked on the 12th of August. So I spoke to, after a whole load of palaver of having a meltdown and thinking that we can't go, and oh my God, I've messed this whole thing up. Turns out I hadn't. The ETA, I don't think, personally, I thought could have been made more obvious that this can prevent you from boarding your flight. If you don't have this, apply for it as early as possible to make sure that you can gain entry to Canada. So, like I said, it's criminal inadmissibility is where you have committed a crime, if you like, or you've been arrested, or you've had some kind of interaction with the police where you've been charged for something and they deem you a risk basically to Canada, so they stop you from entering. There are, depending on the conviction or what have you, or the interaction that you've had with the police, there are other ways around it. So don't give up hope. If you think that you're inadmissible, don't give up hope. There are different avenues that you can go down. So there is, just off the top of my head, there's like you can apply for rehab after, I think it's, if it's within 10 years, but after 5, you are eligible for rehabilitation, which you submit an application, you send it in, a Canadian border officer will then go over it, examine it, and see if you can, if you're deemed rehabilitated, essentially. So our specific journey, I spoke to an immigration lawyer from Canada, and they specialise in criminal inadmissibility. And because obviously Jordan was arrested a while ago, like he's not some big criminal or anything like that, but you know, people make mistakes. He was arrested a long time ago. It was like 8 years ago now, so it's not quite 10 years, but he is technically eligible for rehab. But because rehab can take up to 12 months, the lawyer advised us to go via a temporary resident permit. So I've written some stuff down just so I don't forget, because I feel like when I do it just off my head, sometimes I miss some bits. So I'm trying to keep some structure in the vlog. So other people have asked me questions, I've written them down and written the answers down. So that's kind of what I've done. So if I keep looking down, it's because I've got my little book. Of notes. So a temporary resident permit, otherwise known as a TRP, not a TRV, because that is different. That is a temporary resident visa. We don't require a visa. We required a permit. It's a document issued by the Citizen and Immigration Canada that allows access to technically inadmissible people, so people that are inadmissible to Canada, and it allows them to gain entry to the country. It's only given to a person that needs to come to Canada if their needs to come to Canada outweighs the risk of them being in Canada. So, for example, someone might need to enter, say, for a job, which is like us. We needed to enter because my husband's been offered a job out there in a skilled trade. So we basically have to submit a temporary resident permit and application to see if our needs and circumstances outweigh the risk of Jordan being in the country, essentially. Like, Jordan is not a risk. Can I just add that? He's not a risk in any way, but obviously they have to make sure. So the person who decides, basically has the deciding decision, if you like, it's the Canadian border immigration officers. So some people can get a TRP at point of entry. However, I was absolutely not willing to risk that. I think you have to go via the US. I might be wrong on that bit. I'll have to clarify. But the lawyer did actually say to us, would it be, because it would be quicker for him to go via the US and have a border officer at the border decide whether he can come in. But I just felt that that was too much of a risk itself, because they could literally say, no, sorry, we don't think that you have enough reason, or whatever it may be. And they could literally put him on a plane back. And obviously with 2 children and a dog and 8 suitcases, that's not quite the route I wanted to go down. So we decided to do the temporary resident permit. We used a lawyer. You can do it yourself. However, I wouldn't recommend it, just because there's a lot of like technicalities or little things on the forms that I feel that sometimes need guidance, even though there is like an instruction manual on how to answer the questions and what they specifically mean. So there is help. But for me personally, I wanted to use a lawyer because they were there to build a case for us. Because when you submit a TRP, the lawyer will build you a case and represent you essentially, and they will get all of the information you need. Then they will write on your behalf to say, look, this person we believe is not a risk to Canada, we've assessed everything, blah blah blah. So the Canadian border officer, they decide, or they compare the risks of a person's entry at the time, and see if it outweighs them being there. The time it takes for a TRP is usually, I think this may depend on what country you're in, but from the UK, it's usually between 6 and 12 months. However, and I'm going to say however, because this was a big thing for me. I had like a huge thing with another person, which essentially nearly shattered my whole dreams. So I'll get to that. So basically, when you have a work permit, if you have applied for a work permit already, which we had, I sent our Jordan's work permit off on the 13th of August. We were due to fly on the 12th. I sent it off on the 13th after obviously we missed the flights. And the TRP, if you've got a work permit in, the TRP will go against the work permit timeline. So they physically, the visa office, like, so here it's London for me. The visa office in London will be made aware you've sent an application for a TRP. They will then take out your application and they'll put it with your work permit, because they'll go together, because they need to be assessed together. Obviously, when they read the TRP, they'll see, oh, this person has a work permit, they have a job offer, let's go get their work permit. They'll put them together and they'll assess it as a whole. So the work permit timeline at the moment is 12 weeks to apply from outside of Canada from the UK. It's currently a 12-week timeline. However, that is on specific jobs. It can be a little bit longer, but I am hoping and praying that as will come within the 12 weeks, because we are already currently at 6 weeks. So that is the time it takes roughly. I will obviously do another video at another time to say when we've got it or how long it took to come back, just to clarify. But at the moment, that's the time frame that I've been made aware of. I must also make you aware as well, so that if you are granted a temporary resident permit, it's basically a one pass to get in. You can't then come and go out of Canada. They will give you a specific timeline. So for example, Jordan's job, say they've given him a contract for 36 months, 3 years. They will give you the TRP for the time that you're due to be in Canada. So if it's just for a business meeting, they'll give you a TRP for that. Say if you were there for 3 days, they'll give it you for 3 days. But once you leave, that's it. It's void. So in our situation, we will be getting the TRP. Hopefully they'll grant it for the full 36 months of what his job contract is for. But within that time, once we arrive in Canada, my plan is as soon as we arrive, I will then apply for rehabilitation. I don't care if it takes a year. It's just obviously at the current situation that we're in now, a year, I didn't want to wait a year because of obviously where we're at. Obviously, if you don't know, check the other videos. But yeah, so hopefully they'll give it in for the full 36 months. And then we will, once we land, we'll apply for rehabilitation straight away, get that sent off, and we'll wait for that to come back. Because it is nearly 10 years, or it's within the 10 years, we can apply. And then once he's granted the rehabilitation, that basically wipes his record to say that Canada have decided he's not a risk to us. You won't ever have any other issues, and it won't affect his applying for PR in the future. So yeah, so there is it's a one-off pass. You can't just come in and out of Canada. Like, that's not a thing at all. So yeah, done the timeline. So I had another question, who needs the TRP? So anybody that is inadmissible to Canada but has a valid need. TRPs can cover either medical or criminal inadmissibility. If it's due to a criminal conviction and you've completed your sentence less than 5 years ago, a TRP may be your best option. If it's over 5 years, they usually tell you to apply for rehabilitation. But our instance, we're doing it just to gain entry this once because my husband's already got a job. If you're not going for work purposes or what have you, I don't know, you would have to get a TRP to gain an entry, basically. But like I say, they only grant them in specific circumstances. So who needs a TRP? So anybody that's inadmissible, obviously criminal or medical. So if you have a certain condition and they say, look, we don't really want to cover you in Canada, which that can happen if you've got certain medical needs or medical condition, they will assess you on your condition. Sometimes you'd have to go through a medical and things like that, but they will assess you and either approve or deny you, what have you. Can you work? So you can work with a temporary resident permit. However, you can't just work with a temporary resident permit. You have to apply for your other permits. So say if you need a open work permit, spousal work permit, normal work permit, work specific, whichever kind of permit is, you need to apply for that as well. I will just mention as well, when I did the work permit for Jordan, it did actually come up at the bottom to say, have you applied for a TRP? Please attach the documents here. Obviously, in our instance, I'd already sent my Jordan's work permit off, so I couldn't attach it at that time. I didn't know we needed it at that time. But if you know that you're going to apply for a work permit and a TRP, I would do them at the same time and send them both over together on that application. I would definitely recommend that. But yeah, so you can work when you've got a temporary resident permit, but that doesn't give you the right to work. You have to apply for whichever specific work permit you may require. I've put here, can you leave? You can't leave. I just went over that. You can't leave. Once you're in, it's a one-time pass. If it's whenever it expires, you have to leave at that point. Like, you can't stay a few days after or anything like that. So if you are planning on that you might need to leave, you will need to have something else in place, whether it's rehabilitation like what we're doing, but we don't plan to leave Canada in the first year anyway. So I don't care if it takes a year to come back. But yeah, there is an expiration date on them, and it will depend on the reason of your travel. If say you've got a funeral, a family member has passed away, they will grant you the time to go to the funeral, but then you have to leave. There is also other conditions for a temporary resident permit, which are, so like you have to abide by all the laws in Canada, which obviously you would anyway. But if you got into any kind of trouble in Canada, they'd revoke it and you'd have to leave straight away. So don't go to Canada and start flying down the highway, drinking, whatever. Yeah, don't do that. The application procedure, like I said, you can do it yourself, but I would recommend doing that with a lawyer. And also be careful with the lawyers as well, because make sure that they are lawyers. Of course, I've seen other people say that, oh, they got their money taken and they're not lawyers, or they were consultants and they weren't. Just do your research. I researched, I was actually recommended our lawyers that we used. It was Campbell and Cohen. They specialize in criminal inadmissibility. It was recommended to me from another one of my people on Instagram, and I follow her on Facebook as well. She went through the same thing. She's living in Canada, so she recommended them to me. So yeah, they're a really good firm. I think they're based in Quebec. They're based in Quebec. So yeah, make sure you do your research on your lawyers. I'm sorry if I'm talking really fast. I didn't want to have like a really long video and like bore you. So I hope that if you have any questions, you can message me or what have you. How much? So it costs 200 Canadian dollars. You have to pay your fees when you submit your paperwork. If you're having a lawyer do it for you, we paid our fees. Obviously, bearing in mind, we paid for the lawyer as well. So it was in that fee that we paid. I think it was like $1,200 US to the lawyers. But that included the fee for the TRP. But yeah, you have to pay your fees. The thing won't go through unless you've paid your fees, so you must make sure you pay your fees. Each country's requirements are different as well. I cannot stress that. So whatever I'm saying now, please research the country that you're in. Make sure that is your requirements. You need to make sure that you've got the correct requirements. I've also put here, if your ETA is required, so if you're from a country that requires an ETA like I am, so the UK, you require an ETA to board the flight, as I mentioned earlier. and say your ETA didn't come back, you may be able to get a TRP in that instance. But again, it depends on the nature and the circumstances of why you're visiting. If it's for, I don't know if a wedding might come under it, but I know funerals do, or, you know, if you need to go care for somebody, a family member perhaps, but it has to be, you have to prove it as well, bear in mind. So just, yeah, certain circumstances, they don't just give them out. If you're from a visa required country, you need to apply for a visitor visa and include all of the supporting documents that they require to explain why you're inadmissible and why it is justified for you to enter Canada, and why you need, and also you may need to attend an interview as well. They do interview you, but I don't need a visa. I don't need a visitor visa, so that's only from, you have to check. Go onto the Canada IRCC website. You can check the requirements to certain things, and then I've just done a brief thing as reasons why you might be inadmissible, which, you know, can stop you from entering the country. And so I've just done some bullet points. So DUIs are extremely, like, they do not tolerate them. So anything to do with driving, driving under the influence, or driving while impaired by alcohol or drugs, including cannabis, even though cannabis is legal in Canada, even if you've done it inside or outside of Canada, that will make you inadmissible. Anything to do with, like, whether you're selling cannabis, importing it, exporting it, growing it, whatever it may be, even though it is legal there, I think there is like a prison term. I don't know if it's like 15 years or 4 to 15 years, but it's a lot. So anything like that will make you criminally inadmissible. And you will need a TRP for those to basically let them examine as to why you want to enter, make sure you're not a risk, and it's not like a continuous thing. And let's go over the documents. So obviously, by the way, there are other ones. There's a list. There is actually a list on the website, but the most common ones, obviously people get pulled over quite often. Speeding, maybe speeding, I'm not sure. Driving offences, they're really strict on. Anything to do with drugs and alcohol, violence, theft, you know, like violence and assault, things like that, there are on the list. But funnily enough, DUIs and driving offences are way up there. So that's that. The documents that you will need so I will go over what the process was. So we spoke to the head attorney at the law firm. He then gave us 2 case managers who we would be in contact with. So if one wasn't there, we had to email them both. So if one wasn't there, the other one we'd always get an answer straight back. We had 2, they were great, and they will send over all the forms. So you need a use of rep form, so it's like use of representative. If you're using a lawyer or somebody else is representing you on your forms, you need to fill that form out first. So I found that form pretty self-explanatory. You just fill out the boxes. Wasn't anything too drastic or confusing, but again, there is instruction manuals on how to answer them if you're not too sure on the questions. You need to attach, so they would need your police record, use of rep form, copies of your passport, character references, a TRP form, so your temporary resident form, hand signed. They will send, the lawyers did actually send me both of the forms and then sent me a list of the documents that we would require. So you need character references. Get as many as you can, doesn't matter, and it's from family and friends, so it doesn't need to be like the nurse or whatever. Family and friends, as many as you can, to kind of build a picture of who you are as a person, and like who, you know, what kind of life you live now, I guess. So they're a huge thing. If you have a job offer, so you need to attach, so we had an LMIA, so you need to attach your LMIA, positive LMIA, your job offer, and anything that the employer sends you for your LMIA that you would require to enter Canada anyway. You need to send copies of all of that in with your application to prove that this is the reason you're entering. It's a valid reason, you're in a skilled trade, they require you, and basically they want to know if whatever reason, so if it's a business meeting, it's quite unlikely that they won't accept you because it brings like Canada benefit from it. So my husband's going over as a skilled worker. They need skilled workers, so it benefits them, him being in the country will benefit, the economy will benefit from, obviously not just him, like Jordan's just carrying the whole Canadian economy on his shoulders, but do you see where I'm going with this? So if Canada benefits from you being there, they will absolutely take that into account. If you've got a job offer, LMIA, all of those things will all help your case. So that was really good for us. Birth certificates, marriage certificates, any supporting documents that you can send. So for example, like Jordan plays in like a charity match every year. He does actually do quite a bit for charity, like with football a lot. They do a lot, they raise a lot of money for through football. He's the captain of the football team and he helps those things. So we got the football manager to write him a reference to say that Jordan does do this and blah blah blah. He's attended and volunteered and helped us with the arranging of the events and so on, so that hopefully should help. Also you need all of your court documents. So if you've got any crimes, obviously you send your police certificate off. I assume if you're criminally inadmissible, then you won't have court documents. You need every single time you've attended, you need the court documents from the court. You need to apply to the court from them. We had 2 different courts on ours, and one of them charged us £20 for them. The other one gave it us for free. The one that charged us, it was an absolute nightmare. Like, I was on the phone for about 5 hours. I made 17 calls, literally 17 calls from one department to the other, and they kept sending me backwards and forwards 17 times, to the point I got them both on 2 separate phones and I put them both on speaker and I was like, guys, this has been going, I just need you to send it over. And the issue was they didn't know who I needed to pay to get the documents. You know, this £20 fee that they required, which I think they generally made up. They didn't know who I needed to pay. So they were saying, oh, you need to pay the fines department. But the fines department were like, you haven't got a fine. You don't pay us. We take fines from like businesses, things like that, not just an individual. That, honestly, it was a nightmare. But eventually I put them on the phone to each other and I got it sorted. So yeah, you need all of, so, and also if you're worried about what might be on the documents, don't be. It's not like the whole type up of it. It's literally, he attended, they attended, this date, this was the outcome, these were the fines, this is what he pleaded, he was in attendance, fines were paid. It's like that. And then you also need to get an email to say that the fines were all paid and done and what date they were paid, or that there's no other, you're not outstanding any fines in any courts in England, for example. So we had those sorted. You have all of them sent over. And then I will just mention the TRP form itself, the TRP application form, that was a little bit more in depth, I should say. So you have to, it will say, please tell us the crimes you've committed or the convictions that you have. So you have to write them down, dates, everything. You also need to find as well the crime, not the crime number, but basically the law number. I can't remember the specific name for it, but it was like it's the number of what the crime is that you commit. To say it's like section 4 of 24 Act of this, that's what that is. You will find this on your court documents that you get from court, because I was a little bit stressed. I did actually Google them and find them because I'm just a whiz apparently. But yeah, it is actually on the documents from the court. The court, it will tell you what section of what this, that and the other, because they need that, because the lawyers then have to get the crime of what it is in England or the UK or wherever you live, and they will get the equivalent crime in Canada, and they will send that over to the Canadian border officer, because they want to know what the difference is and what they would charge you in Canada. Say if you committed the crime in Canada, they want to see that what it is basically, and what you would have been charged with, and that's how they assess it essentially. So yeah, so then on the form, so they ask you for those things, and then it will ask you to explain the circumstances around the offence. What happened? What led to you being in that situation? It will also say, another question will say, what effect did it have on the other people involved? Was there any medical attention needed? Was there an assault? Was there any emotional stress? What did you do, or how did you feel about committing that on somebody else, like causing emotional stress to somebody else, for example? Luckily in our instance, like, nobody was harmed. There wasn't like an assault or anything. It was like shouting abusive words or threatening words or whatever in a public place. They press charge, the police press charges basically. So yeah, that was just a whole ball ache. But if you've committed a crime and you've assaulted somebody or anything like that, you need to be completely honest and say, look, this is what led to this situation. I have grown, I have done this, I live this type of life, that was a part of the past, it was years ago, whatever. You need to kind of don't deny, like, oh my God, it wasn't my fault, I don't know what I did, I don't know how I got involved. Don't do that, because that's not kind of what they're looking for. They're looking for you to take accountability of what happened and how you learn from having that interaction with the police, and what you did to rehabilitate yourself, and how you changed yourself to prevent this from happening again, and how you've managed to change your life so that doesn't happen again. Essentially, that's basically what they want to know. And yeah, so they'll then, the questions are pretty self-explanatory, but I just wanted to stress, like, don't be like, oh, I ended up at this place, it wasn't my fault. That's not kind of, they're wanting you to take accountability and say, look, this is what I've learned from this situation. I have done this to make sure I avoid that situation. I will never put myself in that situation again, so on and so on. You need to do that on the form. And then the lawyers will then create a pack, a TRP pack, that they will write you a reference themselves to say, we are representing so and so, this is their instance. They will get a file with the records from the UK, submit all of the information I've just told you to. They will submit that, and then they will do the Canadian version of what the crimes are, why they believe you are rehabilitated, and why they believe you are not a risk to being in Canada, and that you should be gained entry. So and then our lawyer sent it off, so they will need to send it off to the visa centre closest to you. So ours is, like I said, London. And however long it takes, basically, then you've just got to wait. They did because obviously I mentioned that we submitted our work permit in August. They asked me to get a letter. So when you submit your work permit, you will be sent a message on your account on the IRCC. They will send you a thing to say, we've received your work permit application, this is your work permit number, this is proof that we've received your application. And it's like, when you click on the attachment, it's essentially a letter, but there's no title on it, and I can't remember what the lawyers called it, but it was basically a proof of authorization that you've sent it, essentially. There was an abbreviation, but I had no idea what it stood for. And it didn't say it anywhere on the letter. It's just the submitted letter that you receive when you submit your documents. She asked me for that to prove that we'd submitted it. I sent her a copy of that, and then she attached that to the file and said, please see the receipt for the work permit that was sent. Here's the number for you to locate it. Please put them together and assess them together, basically. And yeah, she sent the whole pack off. Like I say, she writes you a reference, builds you a case, and sends it all off for you. I would just like to add quickly as I can, because I know this video is going on a little bit. I'm sorry if I've like droned on. I hope you find it helpful. But I tend personally to, if I don't have the answer, as anyone does, you Google it, you research. And I've got a load of these pages on, say, Facebook, social media, Facebook, Instagram, what have you, groups that I use that are specific groups. So like there's the IEC group, there's the Brits Moving to Canada group, there's a few of them. And it's where people ask other people questions of they've moved to Canada and so on and so on. And basically I asked a question which now I'm really reluctant to ever do again, but sometimes it's really helpful. However, there are certain groups that I think can be quite negative, and I just think it's quite important to put it out there that they are not experts, not all of them. I'm sure that it's basically like me. I'm going through the process. They've gone through the process. It's their experience and their situation. Everybody's circumstances are different. Now, if you're like me, I kind of go into these rabbit holes where if I don't have the information, I want to know the information. So I dig and dig and dig and dig. And basically, I asked a question on a page and said, look, does anybody know? This was before the TRP was ready. And I was just asking because I'd not spoken to the lawyer yet. I was going to ask the lawyer anyway, but I was like, does anybody know how I attach a TRP to my work permit that has already been submitted? And I got met with some rather hostile replies from the admins of the group, which it actually says, you might notice if you're on the groups, it will say like expert. I took that as that they were some kind of consultant or something like that. How wrong was I? So basically I got met with these comments that were like, why are you applying for a TRP? You shouldn't be doing that. You should be doing it. And I'm like, I was very polite and I just said, look, this is our situation. This is what the lawyer told us to do. I was then met with, you shouldn't trust them lawyers, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, actually, somebody from the group recommended they use them themselves. So I do trust them. I'll just trust the process. They basically said there's no way he's going to he shouldn't be allowed it. There's no way he's getting in. And this is the second time now. The first time was the day after the flights were cancelled. Well, we didn't make our flights. And that day was a really tough day for me. Personally, mentally, emotionally, it battered me that day. So for people to be like, yeah, no, you should have looked at this before. Obviously I did. It's not that I've just ignored it. Like, this is a situation where I was aware of the ETA, for example, but it specifically says on the website, apply within 72 hours of flying. Thank goodness I didn't do that because I would have been in the same situation. But yeah, I would advise ETA, do it way before. As long they last 5 years. Do it if you're starting to do it now, just do it. See if you get it. Do that first is my advice. But yeah, so that day I was told that no way we're getting in. That destroyed me. I just given up all of my belongings at home, everything, took my kids out of school, everything for this move. And obviously there was a slip up, there was a bump in the road, but I found a way around it. I'm not an expert, but I found a way around it. I spoke to some people, not the people commenting, but other people then messaged me like, look, I know that, just ignore them. They're being negative. There is a way. Try this, which then led me on to these lawyers. So don't take what other people say completely to heart. I'm trying to learn that. I'm a real, like, I do take a lot of stuff to heart, but I'm trying to be more logical with this kind of stuff. So like with this TRP, when I put this question on, I was met with just hostile answers that there was no way that I should be applying for that. I was done wrong, to the point it was the admins of the group, if I'm honest, which shocked me. They were there to help people. And then one of them said, oh, I've seen you've spoken to our criminal inadmissibility expert. So I was like, oh, so-and-so. And I was like, yeah, I have actually. We've spoken before. And then she kind of backed off. But then another comment came on and was like, don't trust the lawyers. But then this expert came on and was like, you'll be surprised, how many people do this, blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't be applying for that. And I was just like, okay, look, I'll speak to the lawyer. She was like, wow, I would only use this specific lawyer. And I was like, oh, funny that's the one I'm using. Oh, well, this person told me that you're not getting it within this like a year or blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's the same person that I deal with. So that's not, maybe our circumstances are different. I then got private messaged a load of stuff basically saying that I was absolutely incorrect. There is no way someone like me could be right, and there's no way someone like her could be wrong. That was essentially the message that I got. And I was just like, I was so polite. I was so polite. And I was like, look, are you an ex? Like, where do you find your information? This is the information I found. I found it here on the IRCC website. Where did you find yours? Just to kind of make sure we were on the same page and we're looking at the same thing. And then she was like, oh, well, actually, I don't particularly like to put it publicly, but the reason I know so much about the TRP is because I am also I have an application in for one. Huh? What? So you're not an expert. You are in the same position that I'm in. Like, you get your information in the same place I do. So, and I'm like, no. She's like, message the lawyers, blah, blah, blah. They're lying to you or they're lying to me. So I'm like, look, maybe it's just that our circumstances are different. I'll message them. I'll let you know what they say. And I was getting these really kind of sarky messages that were like, well, I don't have any hope for you, but okay. So I was like, all right. Anyway, she then spoke to the lawyer before. I just thought, it was my daughter's birthday at the time. So I was like, I ain't got time for this. This is not going to ruin my day. Off you go. Well, she was wrong. She was wrong. She came back to me and then she tried backhandedly said, oh, I'm not wrong, but there's been a misunderstanding. So I was like, oh, no. You told me I was categorically wrong and there was no way that I could be right and you could be wrong. And this cannot be the first time that you are hearing about it. Turns out her circumstances were completely different. I don't believe she had any urgent need to be in Canada. She had an application in for like 9 months and was still waiting. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I hope you get it. I was so lovely. I am so proud of myself that I was that lovely because honestly, that was strength. Inner strength, that was. Because it almost tipped me over the edge. And I just thought, no, you're not doing this again. You have been meticulous with your research. Back yourself a little bit. Just back yourself. And I did in a very polite way. Turns out I was right. She was wrong. And now she's applied for a work permit because apparently it speeds up the process, which I was absolutely incorrect about, apparently. So don't believe what everyone says. That if I can advise anything, do your research. Ask lawyers. Ask, But if somebody says no, don't just be like, oh, okay. Look into it more because twice now imagine, if I was in a dark place that day, on the first day after the flights, and I'd listened to them and said, that's it, can't do it anymore. I won't be here now, like not here, but like I wouldn't be still in the process, but I am. So yeah, I think that covers the whole TRP. I feel like this video has been really long. I'm so sorry. I know I ramble, but I just wanted to tell you that last bit because I feel like that was a pinnacle moment in my process where actually I was right and I was like, ah! Sorry. So I was really polite and I just said, good luck, blah, blah. And then now she wants me to keep her up to date on our process. And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And eventually she was actually really apologetic and I just said, look, I think you should be mindful of the situations when people are in that situation where they feel like they're asking for help and they're stuck. And then somebody comes along and like hammers into them that they're wrong and they've got no chance. That's not right, especially if you are not qualified to say that. Like, don't do that to people. That's not okay. And she basically apologized and was like, look, I really should have taken like your position into consideration. I'm really sorry. And we ended up having a really nice chat. So she was actually really lovely. But I hope that she has learned from that situation that stop crushing people's dreams. Continue to dream is all I'm saying. Don't give up. So yeah, that is the TRP and criminal inadmissibility vlog from my perspective on what we went through. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to message me on our Instagram, which is Chasing Canada, if you're not already on there. And yeah, I will probably think about doing these a day in the life vlogs. I know I literally did a poll earlier and so many people were like, yeah, I'd love that. And I'm like, wish I'd never answered it now because my life's not that interesting. Literally, like at the minute, all I do is clean and try and keep myself busy. So I'm going to try and think about how I can do these day in a life vlogs without boring you to death. But yeah, thank you so much for watching my new vlog, and I hope it helps anybody that may be in the same situation. Like I say, any questions, just message me on Instagram.